Perfect. I just want to begin by thanking everybody for coming. Lacy is someone that I met through B School, gosh, I guess a couple of years ago, and have loved following her online with how she teaches, really to have a strategy, which, as everybody who knows me knows, is so important to everything we do, that I don't want you doing anything if you don't have a purpose behind it. And Lacy is absolutely a blog expert and knows how to put together the strategy behind it, so you're not wasting your time blogging and not influencing your readers or your potential clients in the way that you want to. And ultimately, it's a marketing tool and a way to drive business. And so I'm thrilled that Lacy agreed when I approached her the other day to really help everybody put an end to using spaghetti as a strategy. I know Lacy and I were laughing about that there's really a reason and a purpose and an easy way to have a strategy that really converts clients with your blog. So without further ado, Lacy, I will let you do your formal introduction, but thank you again for joining us today.
Cool, totally. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled to be here. This is one of my favorite topics to talk about. I'm a super nerd, as you guys probably know, and I just love talking about editorial calendars and blogging and everything that goes along with it. I just want to thank everybody for showing up, because I know this is a super busy time of year, and you know, if you have set aside the time to work on your editorial calendar this morning, I'm really grateful. I'm glad you're here, and I hope I can give you a ton of really actionable content that you can take and implement in your business right away. So the first thing I want to say is that you should have gotten a couple of emails from me before the webinar started, and in one of those was a link to the editorial calendar template, which is what I'm going to be talking about today. If anybody has that link handy, just throw it in the chat box for everybody. If not, you'll get another link after the webinar in the replay email, I think. So don't worry about it. I will show screenshots here, but that's what I'm going to be talking about. So if you want to have that open somewhere nearby so you can kind of look at it or take notes or anything like that, I will be talking about that today. I do have screenshots though, so if you haven't got it, don't panic. It's there, and we'll figure it out. So basically what I'm going to do today is walk through how to use that editorial calendar template and why there's so dang many columns in it, because there are a few things that I think you need to know about your audience and yourself and your business before you start asking the question, what should I blog about? So I'm going to switch right over to my screen share slidey slides here, hopefully. And we will get started. There we go. And share. Woohoo! All right. Can you see that, Krista?
Yes, that looks great.
Okay, awesome. So just really briefly, a little bit about me. Oh, before I get started, sorry. Krista's going to be monitoring the chat box for me. So if you have any questions as I'm going along, pop in there, ask a question, and she'll take note of it and help me, because I'm not good at juggling that many things at once. So she's going to help me out. And so go ahead and pop a question in there if you have one when we're talking, and I'll do some Q&A at the end. So just really quickly, a little bit about me. About 5 years ago, I was in journalism. I was a journalist. I was an associate editor for a local magazine here. And I loved it. It's a fun job. It's kind of fun and glamorous when you get invited to press events and all that kind of thing. But when I got pregnant with my child, I realized that I didn't want to work 60-hour weeks and have deadlines that kept me in the office until 3 and 4 in the morning and all that good stuff for kind of low pay anymore. So I left my job at the magazine, and I decided to try freelancing. And if you've ever tried to be a freelance writer, you'll know that that's kind of an awful gig, especially now. Print is kind of going the way of the dinosaur, and people are paying less and less for good print journalism. So I really found that I hated being a freelance writer. And so I thought, well, what else can I do? How can I take these skills somewhere else? And I said, maybe people need somebody to blog for them. And turns out they did. And all of a sudden, my little ghost blogging business skyrocketed, took off. There were a lot of people that wanted me to blog for them. And I thought when I first started that blogging was just about writing the words, right? Creating the posts and putting them up there, maybe writing a Facebook post, something like that. But I quickly learned that even my clients who had big successful businesses were looking for some direction. What should I post? When should I post it? How do we make this work? How do we make this actually convert for the business? So I made it my job to try to figure that out for them. I've taken just about every big name course out there about online business and blogging. I took B School, as Krista mentioned. I've done a couple of copy bloggers courses, including Teaching Sales, and I've done Blog That Converts from Derek Halpern and a bunch of others. And what I learned was that a lot of people were saying what you should post, but they weren't really saying when or how to make a strategy out of it. And that's when I kind of came up with my own strategy, which has been working super well for me and for some of my ghost blogging clients. I still do that. And I work for some really amazing women, mostly that have 6- and 7-figure online businesses. And I wish I could tell you their names, but then I'd have to kill you. So can't do that. But you should know that this system I'm about to teach you is the exact system I use both for myself and for my clients who, again, are running 6- and 7-figure online businesses and using this content that we create for them to drive that business. So that's a little bit about me. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is this editorial calendar. So this is what you see when you open up that spreadsheet I sent you. And as you'll notice, there are quite a few columns here. You know, it's not just a calendar. It's not just a matter of here's a date and here's what I'm going to post. It's really a lot more detailed than that. And so what I really want to talk about today is all the thought that went into creating this calendar and how you can fill it out thoughtfully so that you can create a strategy that will earn you more business, more customers, more eyeballs, whatever your goal is for your editorial calendar. Before I go any further, I do want to take a second to talk about the difference between an editorial calendar and a schedule. So some people have a blogging schedule. They say, I post every Monday, I post every other week, I post 3 times a week, whatever it might be. That's a schedule. An editorial calendar goes into a lot more detail, and it tells you specifically what you're going to post, when you're going to post it, and if you're using my system, why you're going to post that particular thing at that particular time. So that's kind of the difference, and we'll talk a little more as I go through it about why I believe you need all that information. So we're actually going to be covering another thing I learned in journalism. I got the editorial calendar idea from being a journalist. You know, your favorite glossy magazines have an editorial calendar, and their content is planned out as much as 6 months to a year in advance. They're working on summer issues right now at Christmas. They did Christmas back in July. And I'm not suggesting that you do that, but they do have it down when it comes to knowing what they're producing and when and why. So that's where I kind of borrowed that editorial calendar idea from. And then I also borrowed from journalism the 5 W's. You may remember this from school. Like, did you ever learn this, you know, back in the day, back in elementary school, the 5 W's, who, what, when, where, why, and sometimes how. So that's what I kind of came up with when I was developing this editorial system, is that you really need to answer those 5 W's for every blog post you write. And I know that sounds like a lot of work, but I'm going to show you how to do it quickly and easily with my system. You'll also notice that I've kind of mixed them up. We all learn them, who, what, when, where, why. I've mixed them up. This is the order I think you need to be looking at them. So why, who, when, where, what, and as a bonus, how. And you'll notice the what you're actually going to be writing about is the last thing on my list. So we have to get all the other pieces put in first, and then we get to the what. So let's dive right in here. So the first one is why. And I'm always telling my customers that you have to know your why. And what I mean by that is you have to know why you're posting what you're posting at any given time. Now that sounds a little silly, right? You are saying, of course, I'm posting to get more eyeballs, or I'm posting to get shares, or I'm posting because some guru told me I had to. I hope it's not that last one. But if it is, that's okay, because that's super common. There are actually 2 whys I want you to learn or think about when it comes to posting your blog. The first one is, why are you posting it for your readers? So what do you hope that your readers will get out of it? We live in this freemium economy now where we're giving away a lot of things for free. And so people are not just reading blogs for the hell of it anymore. They're really, they're looking to get something out of it, especially from a business. In very general terms, there's three main reasons people read a blog. They want to be inspired, they want to be entertained, or they want to be educated. So inspirational blogs to me would be like perhaps Danielle Laporte's a good one. Maybe Oprah's Super Soul Sunday blog, that's an inspirational thing. Or maybe even Seth Godin falls into this category. He's very inspirational in a business sense. The second one is entertaining, and those are the people you read just because they're super fun and hilarious and awesome. So I'm thinking of like Deuce, Heather Armstrong, or the Blogess, or any of those, anything you read just because it's super fun and awesome. That's entertaining. And then most businesses fall into education. We're educating them about some aspect of what we do or what we do for them, our service or product, a lifestyle thing. A few businesses follow into those other categories or dip their toes in to inspiration or entertaining. You know, for example, I would say that like Ash Amberjay at the Middle Finger Project, she's very entertaining in addition to being educational. So that's kind of her brand voice. But mainly business owners tend to fall into that educational, that how-to sort of area. So that's the first why you need to know. The second why is, why are you blogging for your business? What do you hope to get out of it? And that's something I think a lot of people miss. They know they're supposed to blog for their readers. They're supposed to be giving great value. They're supposed to be doing these things. But what are you hoping to get back from it? What are you hoping to gain from blogging? And I mean this in a very literal sense. I want you to have a goal for every blog post you post, whether that is this is in service of selling a product, whether it's I want people to sign up for my list, whether it's I want people to comment and share. There's lots of goals you could have, but I want you to remember that that secondary why is really important to know. So that's actually why I have two why columns in your spreadsheet here. You'll see there's one that says category, and then in parentheses it says why, and then there's one that says AIDA, and in parentheses it says why. The first one, category, you may be familiar with this. Lots of people make categories for their blog. I call them buckets as well. Fill your buckets. So a lot of businesses have different categories of things they talk about. In my example here for myself, I have balance, blog 101, and editorial calendar. Those might be three things I might talk about. You might, like for a fitness guru, you might talk about diet, fitness, and mindset. You know, so these are just kind of the broad topics you talk about in your business. And generally people tend to have too many of these and I suggest you narrow it down to just a few, but this just kind of helps you see what are you giving. You could also do this, like if you balance between, say, inspirational and educational, you could put that in this category. You know, this post is going to be inspirational, this one's going to be educational. The second why post is AIDA, and that refers to a really classic copywriting formula that I did not make up. It's been around since the Mad Men era. And it stands for attention, interest, desire, and action. And basically what I believe is that your blog is a long form sales letter. So you are hitting all those 4 points. You know, originally when this copywriting formula was created, it was meant for a single sales letter. But I'm saying you're hitting those points at different times on your blog. So instead of a long sales letter in one blog post, which you could do, I'm saying break it up. And so you're leading people along this path, getting them to come back, you know, reeling them in and leading them towards a particular action you want to take. So in the example, you'll see I have an intention post. So that's a post that grabs eyeballs, gets clicks, gets people's attention. Then there's an interest post, which dives a little deeper, helps explain and explore your topic a little more. I've got 2 desire posts in there, which are generating desire for whatever it is you're offering. And finally, the action post is where you want them to take action. So you want them to buy now, you want them to sign up, you want them to whatever it might be. Again, you can hit all 4 of those points in a single blog post, but I'm using them in this calendar to help me promote a launch or sale. So that's why it's laid out that way.
Lacy, so you said, like, you recommend doing for choosing attention, interest, desire, or action using really one of those. Is that, am I hearing that right? Or do you?
Yes, that's correct. And I'll talk about this a little more as we get into the when, but I use them as a sequence to lead up to something. So if I'm doing a launch, or if I'm having a sale, or if there's a big holiday that people are likely to buy my product for, I will create a sequence of posts, maybe 4 to 6 weeks in advance, and hit those points in those posts. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, that helps. Thank you.
Yeah, and I have done it where I've hit all 4 in one post, and it's doable, and it does work. I did that last summer, selling my Blogstorm course, and I I didn't take my own advice, and I didn't promote it in advance, and so I hit all 4 of those AIDA in a single blog post, and then in a follow-up email, and I did really well. I sold $2,000 worth of product in about a week. So
Okay.
it works really well is what I'm saying. It's a pretty great way to do it.
And this is, and I can look this up, but I was thinking, even if there was a way we could see an example of the blog post that you're talking about that led to the sales, just so we could see it kind of in action, that would be really cool too. If you know the name of it, I could Google it and put it in the chat box. Or if you don't, I know I'm totally putting you on the spot.
No, that's okay. Let me do a quick search on my blog, because I know I can find it quickly, but I can't tell you what the name.
Okay. I don't want to mess you up.
No, that's cool. I love that sort of thing. Were there any other questions in the chat box right now that you wanted to?
The ones that I've seen just pretty much were about just getting the spreadsheet in their hands, and then there was a nice person who's named Guest 62 that shared it with all of us.
Awesome. Thank you, Guest 62.
Yes. the best guest, I guess.
I appreciate that. Thank you. And yeah, you guys also should be able to find it in your email, and it's a Google sheet. So what you'll need to do is go in there and make a copy of it, and then you can edit it. So you can't edit it when you just first click on it, but if you go to File, Make a Copy, you can save it to your own drive. Okay, I'm going to see if I can pop this in the chat box.
Oh, thank you. I know I personally, and I know some of my clients do too, learn when they can take what you're saying and then look at what you did and say, oh, look, there's the attention, there's the interest.
Totally. Actually, I can't do it right now, but I'll tell you the name, Krista, and maybe you can find it.
Yeah.
Called Why a Blog Editorial Calendar Could Revolutionize Your Business. So actually, if you just type in revolutionize into the search box on my blog, it'll be the first thing that comes up.
Perfect. Okay. And I'm sorry for totally sidetracking.
No, that's okay. You'll be able to see in that one kind of where the subheads are is where the different breaks are. So the attention, interest, desire, and action are kind of in where the subheads are. Oh. So you'll be able to see that all in one post.
Okay. Thank you. And I'll post that in the chat box.
Cool. Thank you. So that was the first W. The second W is who. And this is one of the #1 mistakes I see small business bloggers make when they're first starting out, and that's that they're writing to the wrong person. And so let's take an example of this. Let's say we have a photographer, and she has heard that she should write about what she knows. So she starts blogging about her lenses and her lighting kit and how she set up a shot and where she scouts locations. And it's working pretty well. She's getting a lot of comments. She's getting a lot of interaction and shares on Facebook. But then suddenly she realizes the people that are commenting and reading and sharing are other photographers. And that is not the person who's going to buy a photo shoot from her. So what she's done is this sort of classic mistake where she's writing to her peers or her competitors about her business as opposed to writing to her customers. It sounds kind of silly, but I see this happen a lot. And actually, I did it myself when I first started out with ghost blogging. And I'll talk more about that in a second. But it's super common. So if you go, oh crap, I'm doing that, don't feel bad, because it's actually really, really common. The way we fix this is understanding, who your customer is and who your ideal reader is. One little thing I want to say here is if you've done that ideal customer avatar exercise, there's a lot of those floating around. Those are awesome. But you need to remember that your reader might be slightly different from your ideal customer, because they probably haven't purchased from you yet. So you need to think about who is that ideal reader before they become a customer. So we have another column in the spreadsheet that says audience, who. So you might be thinking, this is kind of silly, Lacy. I really only have one audience. I don't need to plot that out every single time I write a blog post. And that may be true. If you don't need this column, you can delete it. But the other thing I want you to think about is you may have more types of people than you think. When I started my food blog right after I left the magazine, I thought I was writing to busy moms like myself with young kids. And as I kept going, I realized that I was getting a lot of readers who were, I was writing about eating organic food on a budget. And so I was getting a lot of readers who were in college and cooking for themselves for the first time and wanted to eat organic. And I was also getting a lot of empty nesters who maybe were making diet changes for health reasons. And that was super surprising to me. I didn't realize that I would have those niches when I started out. So in my example on the spreadsheet, you'll see I've got mom, college, empty nest. That's just kind of an example of how you could break that down. Another way you could break it down, though, is remember that even if you only have one ideal reader, they are going to be at different points in the purchase process. So right now on this webinar, there are some of you who love and adore me and know who I am and are here because you love me. There are some of you who've never heard of me before. You're here because you like Krista or you saw it on Facebook or whatever it is. You don't know me from Eve. You haven't got a clue who I am. You're at very different points in the purchase process for me. So if I'm writing to you, I might be writing to very different people. If I'm writing like a very beginner how-to, or if I'm writing something more advanced, I'm writing to different segments of my audience. So you can mark that out in the who category as well. But getting really clear on that is important to make sure you're not missing anybody. You might be missing people at some point in that purchase process that you just, oh, maybe you're only talking to beginners or you're only talking to advanced people and you're missing other people at different points in the process. So that's just another way to look at how you're spreading out your blog topics there.
So Lacy, tell me if this is right. Like I'm a business and marketing coach for coaches. Mm-hmm. So my who could be someone that's a brand new coach with no clients. It could be someone with a handful of clients, or it could be someone who's been following me a long time and knows a lot of my stuff. Or is that kind of how I would approach that?
Totally. And it might also, you can also think about it like, how problem aware are they? Because a lot of businesses, people may not even know they have a problem yet. Like I found with my ghost blogging part of my business, people didn't even know ghost blogging was a thing. They didn't even know they wanted it because they didn't even know it was possible. So that I might write a different kind of post to that kind of person as opposed to the person who knows about ghost bloggers is ready to hire one. You see what I'm saying? They're at different points.
Yes. Okay. So and when I'm thinking about other people's blogs that I follow too, as you're saying this, it's making sense because some stuff I feel like is posted, like if I'm their ideal client, or I would guess I am, I know some of it is relevant to me, some of it is further beyond me, and some of it is not that I already know it, but it's kind of like, oh, I know that I don't need to read that blog. So it makes sense now that they're kind of doing exactly what you're saying.
Exactly.
So they're smart.
Yeah, it works.
They took Blogstorm.
Oh, I wish. That would be nice. Okay, so we've talked about 2 W's. Number 3 is the power of when. And this is actually where I find that the editorial calendar is the most powerful. This is really the part where it becomes the most powerful. Because when you choose to write about a certain topic, needs to be intentional. So Krista and I talked about throwing spaghetti at the wall to see what sticks. That's how a lot of people blog. They just come up with an idea. They say, oh, this sounds good. I'm going to blog about it. And they see how many comments and shares and likes they get. And that's fine. That's fine when you're first getting started. But when you're ready to start doing things more intentionally, choosing when you're going to publish based on different factors is actually really helpful. And this is where the rubber meets the road in terms of creating the strategy that's going to get you to that why we talked about in the first W. So it's going to hit that goal for you, whether that's signups or sales or whatever it might be. So again, in the spreadsheet, I actually have 2 columns for when. The first one is major events, and the second one is date. And these are both super important. So date is just when you're going to publish. And just as a little sidebar, I get a lot of questions about how often should you publish a blog, and my stock answer here is that quality and consistency is more important than quantity. So what that means is if you can only write a really great blog post once a month, only publish once a month. I'm giving you permission right now to do that. I wouldn't go any longer than once a month because people will forget about you. But the days of having to post every day is over. That's not advice you will hear me say ever, because it's just not, it's not a good use of your time. So if you can create amazing content every day, great, more power to you. You can come work for me. But if you struggle to create really great content even once a week, give yourself permission to do every other week or once a month, whatever works for you. So that's what that date column is just when you're going to publish. But the major events is the one we really want to look at here. This is where you're going to put in your launch information, your sale information. If you are a business that sells something around Christmas or New Year's or Valentine's Day, you want to put those holidays in there, because this is how you're going to know how to build out that sequence that I talked about. So that AIDA sequence. So you'll see where it says big sale. October 5th, 2014. Can you tell I put this together a long time ago? So that big sale, I know that if that's the day I'm launching my sale or launching my new product or whatever it might be, I want my action post to come on that day or that week, right? I want to ask people to take that action. It could be anything you're launching. It could be a new free ebook. It could be a video series. It could be a JV partnership. On my own editorial calendar, I put in this webinar with Krista because I wanted to make sure I was going to promote it ahead of time. So whatever you want to promote, you put in that major events column, and then you can build that sequence backwards, right? So that big sale day is when I want my action post. And before that, I want to generate desire for whatever it is I'm selling. So I want to have a couple of desire posts. Desire posts are usually like before and after stories, or they can be case studies, anything that's going to make them go, gosh, I really wish I had that product because it would make my life so much better. Before desire, we want to hold their interest. We want to get them really interested. We want to expand why our product or service or whatever it is we're offering is better than what else is out there. And before that, we got to get the audience. We got to grab the eyeballs. We got to get the attention. This is the clickbait. This is the viral post. This is the one that people are going to share all over Facebook. That's your attention post. So you can see how I've built that sequence of what I'm going to talk, like what my why is backwards from the event. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so I'm thinking I'm very sequential and process oriented, as you know, but yeah. So I feel like the first thing you would do is figure out, I mean, almost you get this beautiful spreadsheet that you shared with us and do the major event column maybe first. Yes. Is that what you recommend?
I would recommend that, yes.
Okay.
So put in, get your dates lined out and then put in your major events and figure out which week, obviously Christmas is not on the 28th. You can see there, but that would be the day that that's the day I'm posting for Christmas week or whatever it might be. So,
okay.
Get your dates lined up and then get your big events lined up. Get your launches in there. Get your, I'm relaunching my website. I'm launching a new product. I'm opening the shopping cart for this thing, whatever it is. Get those dates in there and then work backwards to plan those sequences.
Okay.
Now, also, people are going to ask, what do you do in between launches? Or what if I don't have a launch model? That's okay too. You can still drive your sales even if you don't have a launch. So for example, I had I think she's here, Laura was a client of mine over the summer, and she sells weighted blankets. And we talked about creating a sequence for her because she sells weighted lap pads for school that help kids have less anxiety when they're in school. And so we talked about building a sequence for back to school. She wasn't launching anything new. She wasn't even really offering a sale, but she wanted to increase the awareness around this one product of hers, the school lap pads. And back to school was a natural time to do that. So we built her sequence in September and August so that she was capitalizing on that natural sales cycle. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, and Lacy, just out of your experience, is there kind of and I'm using air quotes here, but like a regular or natural sales cycle? Like for that, would you recommend 2 desire posts and an action or interest before, or you know what I mean? Is there any kind of magic? or is it something you try and then you tweak
Yeah.
and go forth?
I think it's more try and tweak, but I would sort of work through it in the AIDA order.
Okay.
So you might, just as an example, I've been in the sales cycle for my BlogStorm product because I'm running it live in January. And so over the last 6 weeks, I've been doing a lot of posts about editorial calendars like this one. So I actually did AI. So I wanted to get attention and interest, and then pepper in a few desires. But you just kind of want to go in the right direction, if that makes sense. You're leading towards that action.
Yes. Okay. Follow that order generally and kind of.
You can mix it up a little, but you kind of want to make sure, you don't want to have action before attention, obviously, because if you're asking for action before you've gotten people excited about it, it's not going to work as well. Does that make sense?
Yes, that totally does. That helps. And I like processes. So I like the AIDA. That's very clear and I can follow. So thank you.
You can absolutely do it exactly like that too, if you want to. It's just that I like to usually have between 4 and 6 weeks leading up to something because I only post once a week. So there's only 4 topics, so I have to pepper in a few extras to get to 6 weeks, right? So
no, that's perfect. This is really helpful. Thank you.
Oh, all right, cool. So these lovely ladies, I love this picture. I think it's so fun. The next W, we're on our 4th W, is where. And you're kind of going, where? What does that mean? Obviously I'm putting it on my blog. But what I mean by that is where are you going to promote it? And what I have here is where will you spend your other 80%? There's a statistic flying around out there that if you should spend 20% of your time creating the content and 80% of your time promoting it. And if I could see a show of hands right now, I bet 0 people, including myself, are spending 80% of their time promoting their blog posts. It's just not on our radar. But I think the closer we can get to an 80% sort of goal, the better our content is going to do. I see a lot of small business owners who are not bloggers by nature, who are doing it to support their business, have what I call the field of dreams problem. They think if I write it, they will come. And that just doesn't work anymore. It used to back in the early 2000s. If you had a blog, people would come read it. But there's so much noise out there now. It just doesn't work that way. So you need to have kind of a standard promotion that you do for every blog post. You probably already do some of this, like sharing it to Facebook, sharing it to Twitter, sharing it to any Facebook groups you might be in. Maybe Pinterest is your thing, whatever it is. There's probably a few things you do every single week. And you don't necessarily have to note that in your editorial calendar because that's standard, right? That's what you do every time. But I want you to think about and take note of where else you could promote each post. So when we look at this, I have the promotional strategy column here. So on this one, I have share with mom CEO Facebook groups. So that one would be about being a mom and being a business owner, right? So I definitely want to share to that group. A really great example of this I used to have a client who did beautiful, bespoke, handwritten, hand calligraphy wedding invitations. And she was also super geeky. And so one time on her Instagram, just because she was practicing her calligraphy, she did a wedding invitation for the Red Wedding on Game of Thrones and posted it to her Instagram. And I got all up in her grill and I was like, you need to put this on a blog post and then you need to share it to places that would be interested in it. So we found a website called Geek Bride. And then we found a couple of other geeky websites that weren't at all about weddings, but did talk about Game of Thrones and shared it. And it ended up being one of her most trafficked posts because people thought it was so cool. Obviously, not every blog post is going to be a good fit for Geek Wedding or Geek, these Game of Thrones websites for her. But because that one was specifically, we got a lot of extra traffic. So I just want to put this in there for you to be thinking about where else can I share it. Another great tip I can give you is if you talk about anybody else in your blog post, whether it's another business owner, a product you like, another company you like, email them, let them know. People are flattered that you've talked about them, and you can ask for a tweet or a mention. You don't even have to ask for it. Sometimes they'll just do it. I mean, I've mentioned Brian Clark from Copy Blogger. I've mentioned Ramit Sethi, and I've gotten very nice emails back from them. Brian commented on my blog and tweeted my post, and that was huge for me. In my niche, having the guy who runs Copy Blogger tweet me out, that's a big deal, and all it took was an email. So, you know, just put that in your brain and make note of ideas of where else you could promote a particular blog post based on the topic. I've also got a couple of columns in there for Facebook copy and Twitter copy. That's really useful if you use a VA or a social media manager or anybody else on your team who's going to help you promote a post. You can kind of go ahead and write it out. If you don't want to use those, that's okay too. I'm just kind of showing you another way you can use your editorial calendar here.
And Lacy, one thing too I wanted to throw in is so many times we write great blog content and then we let it go just kind of the way of the dinosaur. But I found too that even re-promoting previous posts of mine that have been very effective or drew a lot of attention has served me well. And it also looks like it's newer content, even though, I mean, when people read it, they'll see the dates maybe a year ago. But if it's still fully relevant, it's something that you can still look like you're doing a lot and putting a lot out, even if it's driving people to a post that I wrote, you know, a year ago or something. Is that something that you recommend doing as well? And
totally, absolutely. And I don't have it so much in this presentation, but if you look at my blog, just this week I wrote one about how to do a content audit and see what content has been working well for you. And a few weeks ago I wrote how to use your editorial calendar for more than just the calendar part. And in part of that, what I said was you can put some metrics in here. So if your why for your business is, let's say, about getting email opt-ins, then you can actually add a column to your editorial calendar and go back after, you know, some time has passed and say, okay, how many email opt-ins did that post get me? Am I achieving my why with this content? And it's a really great way to see. You can add whatever metrics are important to you. So if it's social shares, if it's likes and follows, if it's whatever it might be, you can put those stats in your editorial calendar, you know, sort of. I made a Lord of the Rings joke in that blog post and said it was one calendar to rule them all, because you can put all your information in one place and kind of see which posts are worth reposting again, which ones got me a lot of traffic, which ones might be something I can not write the same post again, but spin off into another post. Which ones would be good to repurpose maybe. So I've written it as a blog post. Maybe I should do it as a podcast or an infographic or something else.
Okay.
So you can use that kind of information. You can put that in your calendar and then use it for sort of a year-end or you know, quarterly or every 6 months sort of audit to see what's working and what's not.
Oh, that's great. I love that, and I love being able to track and measure it so clearly. You know, sometimes the content we feel like is going to be the best and the most impactful isn't necessarily the best and the most impactful when you look at what you're measuring.
It's absolutely true. And, you know, you have to kind of also say, like, what's working for me now. So about 2 years ago, I wrote a post called "What Should You Pay a Blog Writer?" And it is still like my #1 trafficked post from Google, which is awesome, except that it does not convert. It does not convert to my list. People are looking for the information, but they're actually not looking to hire me. Okay. And they're, you know, and also, like, as a ghost blogger, I'm full. I can't, even if they were looking to hire me from that post, I wouldn't want to write another one about that because I'm already, you know, I'm full. I have a waiting list. So I'm not going to write, even though that one does really well with Google, I'm not going to repurpose it. I'm not going to promote it so much. I'm not going to write another one on a similar topic because it's not actually achieving my business why anymore. It was good for me when I first wrote it, but even though it's still ranking really high with Google, it's no longer my priority. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. And that's a really important point too, that your why at one point will shift as your business grows and as your promotion calendar switches too. So even though it's a great blog post in a lot of ways and maybe achieved your old why, it's not serving your new why. So it's not necessarily a good topic to hash out or repost or do that kind of thing.
Exactly. And that's a really good point to mention, is that your why for your business will shift more frequently than your why for your audience. So if you're mainly educational or inspirational, that's really not going to change too much unless your entire business model shifts. but your why for what you want to get out of any particular blog post, it might shift weekly. You know, you might say, okay, this week I'm going to focus on Twitter. This week I'm going to focus on Pinterest. This week I'm going to, you know, whatever it is. Maybe not weekly. That might be too much, but it's going to shift more frequently than other things. So just keep that in mind. It's not static.
Yeah. And Lacy, one question that popped in, Jessica asked on the where topic. She said, how do you promote your post on another's website, like the Geek Wedding site? And
Sure.
I think that's, or I'll let you take that.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a whole other topic, but basically I would send them an email and say, hey, I wrote this thing. My audience really loves it. I thought your audience might be interested in it too. Here's a tweet I wrote for you. You can just click, you know, you make it as easy as possible for them, like you're doing them a favor. A lot of these big websites, especially if they do content daily, they are dying. They need stuff to promote. So you really are doing them a favor in that sort of case. Anybody who comes in and registers for my free content library, there is a promotional email template in there that can help you like figure out how to word that. But basically you're saying, I wrote this thing, my audience thinks it's great. I thought your audience might enjoy it too. Here you go.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Did you have anything to add to that, Krista?
No, I think that's a perfect way to summarize it. Just really making it, my goal is always to make it as easy and concise as possible, especially if you're asking someone else to do something.
Yeah.
You know,
and
just
the more you can build up those relationships before you ask for something, the better. So if you can follow the person on Twitter or, you know, interact with them somewhere, leave comments on their other blog posts before you ever ask them to do something, you're much more likely to get a yes.
That my kids have learned that as well. They tell me how much they love me before they ask or tell me.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. All right, so we are down to our last W, which is the what, which is what you've all been waiting for, right? Like, what the flying zucchini do I write about? So hopefully this system actually makes it a lot easier to decide the what. So Krista, you were talking about, you know, what order should we fill it out? So if you fill out your dates and then you put in your major events and then you know you're building your sequence backwards, so you know your why, you know when you need a desire post and when you need an attention post, well then filling in what you're going to talk about actually becomes a lot easier because you've narrowed your focus. So if you know, just using myself as an example, I know I'm launching Blogstorm in January. I know that I want to talk about editorial calendar building. I know I need a desire post on this date. Well, then I've narrowed my focus. How do I create desire for an editorial calendar? That's what I need to write about. And so it actually becomes a lot simpler to decide because you're not faced with the entire universe of topics you could talk about. You have a much more specific focus. You know, I want to throw out there, you know, a lot of people, one of the objections I get to putting together an editorial calendar is people say, well, I write about timely topics, or I like to write when I'm inspired. And that's fine. Those things are totally fine. But if you have the plan mapped out ahead of time, even if you don't fill out the what until you sit down to write it, you know what your goal is. So I had a client last summer in Blogstorm, and she's a financial coach, and she likes to write about things that are happening in the news, things that are happening in popular culture and in the zeitgeist. And so I helped her see that if she plans out even her sales cycle, like I need a desire post on this date, she can sit down and say, okay, I need a desire post. What's happening in the news right now? And then she can sort of take an angle on that topic that generates desire for her service. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So even though she particularly is not planning out her topics way in ahead, she's got that framework. So she knows how to take an angle on her topic when she decides what it'll be so that it's still supporting her business. So go ahead. Did you have a question?
Oh, no, I was just going to say it just makes it purposeful in advance, even though she doesn't know the exact topic.
Exactly. Exactly. So the second tab in the spreadsheet, in the template spreadsheet, is what I call your idea bank. And this is where you should, every time you have an idea, whether you're in the shower, whether you're driving, you should eventually record it in your idea bank, because you want to have one spot where all your brilliant ideas live. And I actually go a step further. Instead of just recording the idea, I include my 2 why columns. So I have my category and I have my AIDA. And if I can tell ahead of time, you can see on here some of these I don't have categorized, and that's okay. But if I can tell ahead of time that this is going to be good for my blog lifestyle or blog 101 topics, and that's going to be an interest post, or that's going to be an attention post, when I'm ready to sit down and fill out my calendar, or when I need a topic to write about, I can just go in there, sort the sheet, and find exactly what I'm looking for. It's really helpful. So I would highly recommend you kind of get in the habit of logging all your ideas in this part of the spreadsheet, and then go ahead and take some time to think about them and where do they fall in that AIDA cycle? Where do they fall in your categories? What are they, how do they fit in with your whys? And then when you're ready to fill out your calendar, you've already got all of the pieces. You just have to slot them into the puzzle. Any questions about this right now? I think this is pretty straightforward.
This is really helpful to me to even see kind of like your attention titles that you used, that it doesn't always have to necessarily relate right to a product, or you selling something like the biggest grammar mistakes that bloggers make, or how to release perfection. All that would get a lot of attention, because people are going to say, I want to release perfection. I'm a perfectionist, or I want to figure out what those mistakes are. So it just is eye-opening to me in how you did that, and that's really helpful information.
Yeah, and I find a lot of times people, when they're thinking about it in that sequence, they actually can fill in the blanks for themselves. So like they're saying, okay, I know my desire post for this product is going to be X. And then that sort of leads them to think about, okay, so what would draw attention to that? And then they can kind of fill in the sequence a little more easily because they're thinking about it with that framework.
Yeah. This is great. Thank you.
Cool. So I did tell you there was going to be a bonus, and that's the how. And so if any of you are going, okay, this sounds awesome, but I really don't know how to do this for myself, I just want to throw out there that I do have this course Blogstorm that I mentioned a couple of times. I'm not big on the huge heavy sales pitch. It's just not me, but I do want to let you know that if you are looking for some more help, some more support, this exists. It's out there, and I'm actually running it live in January. Like I said, Blogstorm is an evergreen course. You can buy it at any time of the year. It's always available, but I only run it live twice a year. And the benefit of that is that you get access to me in the Facebook group. I'm there every single day answering questions, and you get a live office hours with me once a week where we just run through questions, and it's really awesome, and I really enjoy it. It's a lot of fun, and I really love being able to workshop people's calendars and their topics and their strategy with them. So it's a great opportunity if you're thinking about this at this time of year and you want some more support, you want my eyes on your strategy, you want my eyeballs on your calendar, and my advice, I would say that it's a good time to hop in and see if Blogstorm is right for you. There's a link right under the webinar box, but here it is anyway. It's lacyboggs.com/storm. And just again, I hate these sort of like false scarcity tactics, but this is a real one. I'm repositioning Blogstorm in 2016. I'm going to be adding more information about how to make it, how to set up your strategy so that you're actually getting sales and things like that. So there'll be more content. I'm going to be testing some of it out in January, so you'll get it in January. Plus, if buying now, you'll get access to it when it gets repositioned and relaunched. So, and the price is going to go up a lot. I mean, not to scare you, but it is. So if you think this is something you want, it's a good investment to do it now. It comes off your taxes for 2015 as an educational product, and you will save a lot of money over the future. So that's my sales pitch pretty much there. I don't want to hammer this too hard. I do want to give a couple more little examples of how people have used this system and Blogstorm in particular. And then Krista, stop me if you've got questions. I'll try to leave a few minutes before the top of the hour. I want to be mindful of your time, everybody's time. So But I will try to leave a little time at the end for questions. So this is Sonia, isn't she pretty? And she was one of my first editorial calendar clients, and she was really unclear about her why when she came to me. She had this vision of being, she's a sort of a spiritual coach, and she had this vision of being an inspirational, spiritual place for people to come, but it wasn't converting for her. Like, being an inspirational blogger was great, except that nobody was taking action, and that was a real problem for her. And so what we came out with was that maybe she needed to have some more action-oriented posts, some how-tos. How do you take action in her space? So what would she advise you to do if she was your coach? And once she started implementing those, she found she got a lot more engagement. She found she got a lot more opt-ins because she was using a content upgrade model where she'd have a little worksheet or a journal prompt or something they could download specifically from a blog post. So she was getting a lot more opt-ins, she was getting a lot more engagement, and she was growing her list, which was her big why for her business. So it helped her kind of see where the gap was between what she wants. She could still be inspirational, but she needed that action piece to achieve the why she wanted for her business.
So would you have said she was doing the first attention and interest mostly with the way she was posting prior to working with you, and then you helped her to do more of the action piece?
Exactly. So she was all about being inspirational. So a lot of times she was just sort of talking about her life or experiences she had with her clients and things like that, which can be inspirational, but it doesn't necessarily lead people down that path. And I'm not even sure she was really doing attention posts. I think she was sort of stuck in that interest slot. That's all she was doing, and it really wasn't converting for her. So once we spread her out a little and showed her how she could write different kinds of content and still feel inspirational, she got a lot better results.
Awesome. Okay.
Yeah. So this is Sarah Greer. She's a friend of mine and another copywriter. And she was one of the first people to take Blogstorm. I offered it to her for free, sort of as a beta trial. I wanted her opinion. And I was shocked to find out, had never thought about using her blog to lead up to a promotion, like that strategy, that sequence I was talking about. Even as a professional copywriter, somebody who knew the AIDA process, who used it in sales pages, she had never thought to apply it to her blog. So it was a totally new way for her to look at her system, and it changed the way she was doing her own content marketing, which was really gratifying for me that a colleague of mine found it useful. And finally, this is Mariah. She was like my star pupil last year. She was starting a new business as a health coach, and she wanted to do video blogs. And so I was like, yeah, bring it on, let's do it. And so what she found was that once she got out of this like analysis paralysis and not knowing how to get herself organized in all these moving pieces, she actually had more than the average blogger, because she had to shoot it, edit it, get it transcribed, get it up on upload it, she had all these moving parts, right? But she found she could use her calendar. The calendar gave her a structure. And so she and her husband, who's her editor and her videographer, could both look at this document and say, okay, so Mariah is writing these ones. We're going to shoot them on this date. He needs to be editing these, so they're ready to post on this date. And it was all it became like, okay, this is their hub. This is where they know all their information lives. And it really got her unstuck from getting started, because she found this organizational piece she was missing. And she really was a perfect example of topics. So I said she was a nutrition. So she talked about nutrition, fitness, and mindset. And she rotated between those every 3 weeks, like clockwork. So people would know ahead of time what she was going to be posting about. So if they were really interested in nutrition, they'd know that there was another one coming in 2 more weeks. So it really worked out well for her as well. Okay, so just to wrap up, here are our 5 W's again: your who, your what, your when, your where, your why, and your how. And if you fill out all 5 of these, and I really do recommend not just doing this in your head, but at least in the beginning, filling out the entire spreadsheet for each blog post that you write. It will become second nature, and you may not have to put in, your who or your where, perhaps, as you get more used to it. But starting out, really filling it out and doing everything intentionally, and I think you'll find your blog does a lot more for your business. So yeah, that's the end of my spiel. I'm happy to take some questions now if there are any.
I think let me pull up. Laura Jacobson said that she took Blogstorm in June and it's an amazing course and that taking it live is definitely the way to do it.
She is my like #1 fangirl. Thank you, Laura. I appreciate that.
If I'm not seeing any other questions come up, because I know we've kind of sprinkled them throughout too as we went along.
That's great. So I just want to reiterate, you know, the link for the template is in your email, or our guest user 67 or whatever it was, plop the link in there. If you need it though, don't hesitate to shoot me an email. We'll send you a link. It's totally free. You know, that's no big thing. If you are interested in learning more about how to use your editorial calendar for different things, I would highly suggest checking out my blog from the last few weeks. Like I said, I have been doing this myself, so you can kind of see how I've been doing it. See if you can tell which posts are attention and interest and desire and so on. I'll give you a clue. I did a case study of myself, I think it was last week, how I use my system to plan my next quarter of business. So that's a desire post. That's a case study that's really going to build up people's desire and see how it works and say, yeah, I need that. I want that. So you can use me as an example to kind of see it in action. And again, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send me an email. I'm around. Come join me on Facebook, wherever you'd like to see me. And yeah, if there's no more questions that have popped up, I'm gonna say we're 2 minutes early. I'm getting you out at the start of the hour, and I really appreciate everyone who hung out with us and chatted all day.
Oh, Lacy, thank you so much for taking the time. I mean, just looking at the feedback in the comments, everybody's saying they've got loads of notes. It was very helpful, and just your time to walk people through the strategy makes us be so much more intentional, and therefore I know that everybody's going to be able to make more money and be able to see what results they're working towards with their blog, which is, I mean, at the end of the day, really what it's about. So I really appreciate you sharing your expertise.
My pleasure. Thank you so much, Krista, for having me. And everybody who's on here, Krista's going to come do a webinar for my audience in January. So look for that as well. I know it's going to be awesome. So
it'll be fun.
I think we'll say goodbye then. Thanks, everybody, so much.
Thank you.
Bye.